Welcome to Best Kept Secrets Travel, Episode 7. My name's Morgan.
And I'm Will, and on today's episode, we're doing part 1 of common mistakes to be made whilst travelling, with 10 mistakes per episode.
I thought you were going to say 10 parts.
No, 10 mistakes.
Well, I mean, it could be 10 parts, but let's roll the intro.
Best friends, and that's for life. Who stay traveling? I'm talking worldwide, 65 countries between the two. Every moment is so unbelievable. Sharing the best kept secrets about the trips and mistakes they made that they can't forget. So tell me if you're ready for a time to remember as they gear up for the next adventure. Yeah. Woo! Best kept secrets travel.
So before we kick off this episode, Morgan's going to tell you guys all about the trees that we're planting when we get how many subscribers on YouTube?
Every 100 subscribers we get on YouTube, we're going to plant one tree in the National Trust. And every 50 downloads on all podcast platforms, we're going to plant...
one tree.
Well done, well done. And I think we're also...
But that tree is going to be in one of our favourite countries or continents around the world. So far we've done...
So anywhere.
All
Could
over
be
Africa,
everywhere.
South America,
Really.
Europe, and it's growing.
It is.
Well, they are literally growing.
They're literally. And actually, I don't know what this episode's about, Will, so...
This is an episode led by myself.
And why is this a good episode to watch or listen to?
I think recently we've, especially, and a bit of a shout out to the Travel Squad, which has grown,
TTS?
otherwise known TTS, which is huge growing community on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and everywhere.
Where did you first see it?
I first saw it on TikTok
Yeah,
because there are a couple of videos which went
was-
viral in the UK.
yeah, I was TikTok too, and then I moved to Facebook.
Okay.
And now I'm on WhatsApp groups.
And what we found so far is there's a enormous percentage of even that community, which is a very sort of travel excited or travel centric community where people really want to travel, really want to get out, try new things, but then a large percentage of that have very minimal, close to the zero experience of what we're going to call international travel. So a lot of people in the group might have gone around different parts of the UK, which technically is crossing borders, but we don't need passports, you don't need
It
visas,
is.
you don't need to pack
To
the
the
same way.
Principality of Wales.
You're not getting on a plane, you're not going through the airport, all of that. So I think a lot of these common mistakes
Fly
will
internally.
easily apply to all of them, as well as apply to even experienced travellers who haven't necessarily just processed it before, because some people we even come across when we're travelling
Or I'm
still make really common mistakes.
Yeah, or I'm sure it could just be funny stories that remind you of mistakes you've made.
we've got some classic cases in here.
Do we? Because I don't.
So the first common mistake we've got on the
Numero
list
uno.
is overpacking.
Never heard of it.
I think South America was one of our best ones in terms of optimal packing.
My first trip to Vietnam, my first backpacking trip ever, hugely overpacked. I took a roll mat, even though I was staying in hostels, that I religiously made sure that I did not lose, and it stayed on the outside of my bag for the whole
You didn't use it
6.5 trips. No. It was. I used it to carry some bottles at one point in the middle of the thing, but
That's it.
apart from that, no.
In Australia and New Zealand, I know by the end of the trip when we were literally packing our bags to leave back to the UK, we were unpacking just to compact it all in to make sure it all fit properly. We then went, forgot this minute, haven't used it once.
Well, I know.
I've gone on long trips like that and not used a pair of shoes, which I've carried around for like 4 weeks.
And I know what annoyed you the most is that bag of sweets.
Oh, no. Morgan brought a bag of sweets from the UK
I was saving it for a rainy
through
moment.
New Zealand, through Australia, and then brought it all the way back to the UK.
I didn't have any rainy moments as well. I did, but
We had many rainy moments in New Zealand.
it was a very positive trip. But I didn't need the sweets. But
So back to overpacking. What can you do to not overpack, and what advice have you got to our viewers and listeners?
one bag only. We preach it at this
One
point.
bag only.
One bag only. Yeah, at this point we preach it, but I definitely believe that you can survive, unless you're doing something like skiing or like a proper activity where you need the extra equipment.
Yeah.
If you're backpacking, you only need one bag.
And we're not talking about a really big backpack here. We are talking about carry-on luggage. This is
Carry-on
not
luggage,
check-in luggage.
nothing more than carry-on luggage. You don't need.
Unless you're doing really specific trips where you have some sort of knife or something which has to go into check-in.
Yeah.
That's a very different story.
Yeah. So you need things like, you don't need that many t-shirts realistically.
No, I think we've done some of our big trips with about 3. And then we end up buying some sort of...
Jumpers, you only need, if you need a jumper, you don't necessarily need one. If you need a jumper, you only need one. But then also you don't need to pack it, just put it around your waist or even tie it around the outside of your bag. Trousers.
When you're on the plane, you can have your bag more overflowing ish when you're actually trekking in outside, but when you're on the plane you want to make sure your bag doesn't get checked, so you wear your heavier shoes, you wear your trousers, you wear your jumper around your waist, you have your camera out or whatever you've got. But I think forcing yourself to do the one bag only rule, or going with that mindset, even if you take more than one bag, is you're really just thinking, do I actually need this? Am I going to be able to wash my clothes at least every 3 days? Because that case, then you only need 3 tops, right? My point.
One.
Yeah, technically you could. But on certain trips, you don't need a brand new t-shirt every day. And if you're going, let's say, like when I trekked through Namibia, all my tops were technical tops, and they're not cotton tops, which really sort of soak up all your sweat and everything. They tiny rinse under a tap, or not even having to do that. Some days you'd wear them back to back.
Yeah, so when I did the Lost City trek, we were told you need one set of trekking clothes, one set of evening clothes. Every day you wear the same trousers, same top trekking, and then every evening you put on some dry clothes and you can relax and wash and be clean then. But you then put on the same wet clothes every day.
Yeah.
Because they said there's no point. You're going to get soaking wet 3 minutes into your walk. Your clothes will have dried by the morning. There's no point in carrying extra, because you got to carry everything on these treks.
So just before we move on to our next point, the key points in overpacking are: think before you put it into that bag when you're leaving. Is, do I need this? Because that is the bottom line of it.
Yeah, I think you should pack and then look at what you've packed and take half of it out.
Yeah.
Because the majority of people, you're at least 50% overpacking.
Right. Next point we need to crack on is dining too close to major attractions. And I know in here we have a great one from Barcelona when we were both very, very disappointed with ourselves because we were tired and tipsy.
Tiredness does increase a lot of bad decisions.
Hangry and tipsy.
Tiredness specifically does change your decision. When you're tired and hungry, that's never a good time to make important life decisions like where to eat.
So why don't you dine near a major attraction, and what is our story?
So the main reasons why you never dine anywhere near the tourism zones are because, one, well, it's not the most important, but you're not getting the truly authentic experience. You're not getting the really good food. You're getting what the tourists want. 2, and probably should have started at this point, it's about 6 times more expensive than the rest of the country. And the food quality is often a lot lower. Our fantastic experience in Barcelona is what did we want to eat? Very famous.
Really wanted a
famous food in Barcelona.
paella.
Paella. We wanted some paella in Barcelona. And
We're craving it.
we're craving it. We'd been walking around for hours because we just turned up. It was a very last minute trip. We walked around.
This
saw
is our
the
famous
beach.
Barcelona trip where we booked it playing darts the day before.
Really famous. Didn't we watch the horse? Wasn't it a horse race?
Yeah, and then darts.
Yeah. But yeah, very famous. And we ended up being on the tourism street, the like main sort of street in Barcelona where all the touristy restaurants are, and we saw this massive paella. And someone called us in. We decided that it was a reasonable price. I think we got sold because of the beer.
Beer. It was.
Yeah.
It was the large beer.
We got a large beer with the
a discounted
paella, with the discounted price, and we decided that was the one that we'd go to.
Bad move. It was dry, overcooked.
Overcooked. Had been cooking for about 3 years.
It was disgusting.
It looked like it had been in that pot for 3 years. It was not pleasant.
No.
And it was something I love paella, and it was something that I was really excited about before going to Barcelona.
I think the key thing about if you're getting a restaurant near a major attraction is one of two things. One, insanely expensive and likely to be out of your budget. Or two, all they care about is volume and not quality of experience and product. So the majority of the restaurants which are right next to it and can afford to be right next to it have 20 waiters who are literally just churning out food. And it's not a really beautiful, amazing, tiny restaurant where they just care about the food and the customer experience and they're doing it for the love of that.
Yeah.
These other ones are just machines. And that's what we walked straight into.
Yeah. I had no complaints about the beer, though.
No. That
It was nice.
That made the paella better. And that's not really possible.
Well, yeah, because you put the paella in your mouth and then you just took a big swig of beer and it would go down.
Right. So that is basically why you don't dine near major attractions. Is you're unlikely to get the best food unless you're willing to spend
No, you're not going to get the best food.
big money on it. So, number 3, I think there are exceptions to this if you're doing big city breaks or you're traveling a certain way. But if you're looking at backpacking and doing what we're calling traveling in this scenario, is traveling with valuables. I'm talking about jewelry, blatantly expensive cameras, and drones and stuff like that. I think too many people go with ignorance.
I think you can travel with a lot of it, but I think you shouldn't.
But would you go
have to
backpacking
be,
with a Rolex, for example?
You have to be careful where you show it.
Yeah.
For example, in Colombia, when you're walking around, there's lots of places where it's just recommended not to get expensive equipment out. Even though I had lots of my cameras and things on me, I would say jewelry, just don't take.
Yeah, you don't need to take diamond earrings.
Accidentally.
If you want to wear rings, just buy some cheap ones.
I accidentally wore my ring to Bulgaria because I forgot to take it off.
Yeah.
And I felt so uncomfortable the whole time. There were no issues at all, but I felt
you felt
so
weird about
self-conscious about it the whole time. It was a weird experience. But yeah, jewelry is a big no. Cameras, there are tips that we have in some of our previous episodes that we've filmed on photography tips, but the main one that I had with my big DSLR, which I now have a mirrorless, is to make it look rough and ready. You don't want to be flashing new looking phones and cameras out, so I would put duct tape over all the Canon logos because Canon is a very well recognized brand, and just by doing that, even though the camera, it's impossible to hide that it's a nice camera, even just doing that it just makes it look better and it makes you less of a target. But you do have to be careful with where you get it out.
Yeah. And I just think it just makes you a bigger target than you already are in some countries. I think and we're speaking from Westerners' perspective, right, is when we've travelled, you're cautious about the way you act and your appearance and what you're carrying anyway. There's no need to then carry around a really expensive watch or jewellery. And also, if it's sentimental to you, you don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
So, moving on to 4, which I think we've made the mistake of in the past, but now we found the right balance for it. I think there are different ways to take this, and I'm talking in terms of travel.
I don't know where this is
in terms of like transport, number 4 is creating an over ambitious itinerary. So I'm talking about trying to do like 8 countries in 9 days. It's just not fun. You're not going to experience it. What we normally do is, I think we're over ambitious in a different way, because you don't want to spend 60% of your holiday literally in transport. You don't want to just be in buses and trains the whole time. You want to actually do activities. We're over ambitious in the activity side, but we make that work.
Yeah. So you're right. The key is to actually make sure that you can reasonably get between places and activities. So, for example, skiing in Serbia, in Kapalnik, you can't, even though it's closer to go to Pristina, another country called Kosovo, or technically Serbia. I don't want to. I realise what I said now.
Cancel culture, here we come, Morgan.
We're done. Okay, we won't get into that, but you can't really fly. It's harder to fly to Pristina, even though it's closer to Kapalnik. If you wanted to go for a long weekend skiing in Serbia, which in theory you could, you'd have to probably fly to Belgrade, which is a 5-hour transfer. And that means that you're probably only getting a day and a tiny bit of skiing, which makes it a not good cost-benefit analysis. You have to really look at the transport times, and just because you can not look that up, think it's a really good idea, think, oh yeah, I want to go to this place to do this, and not realise how far out it is, and then it's just not feasible. And you don't want to spend 2/3 of your trip travelling.
No, I think a lot of people make that mistake. Or they don't, or they think, oh, I really need to do this and this. And they're like, I've known people to book the experiences and they go, oh my God, they're other ends of the country. Do your research as well. Just think, if I've only got a 3-day window, I don't, and we talk about this in our planning episodes, you don't want to spend you don't want to have a 3-day holiday and fly 7 or 8 hours one way and then have to fly back, because not just are you going to be knackered from the flight, but you've also got the time zone change. And then your actual holiday, your experience of your holiday is sat in a plane or in a train or in a bus.
I think where we nailed this and made decisions was in Bolivia.
We did pretty well in Bolivia. We
But
did travel a lot.
in Bolivia, we did
A fair bit of transport, but we maximised the experience.
in
We did the
Bolivia
same
we
in
had
Australia.
we had to make a decision: do we want to go to the salt flats
Yeah.
or
And then
not?
we realised how much time.
And that was in the complete opposite direction of Ruinabake,
Yeah.
which was episode 23 of season 1 and the finale, where we
Which
talk
is going
about
to the Amazon rainforest.
yes, and we had to make a decision whether, because in theory we could have done the salt flats and not done the Death Road.
Yeah.
In theory, it was possible to do, but then we would have been travelling almost all day to try and do that, and had absolutely no breaks, and it would have been more travelling than seeing and doing things.
Yeah.
And we fortunately made the correct decision to go to the Amazon, do Death Road, do the free walking tour in La Paz and see the prison, and then we got to explore La Paz a lot more. And also we had the issues of the coup. But
Yeah.
that was where we nailed that.
So yeah, I think just it comes back to planning, which is episode 1 of
Season 1 and 2
and 2 is
and 3
just plan properly, and then
and 4.
you won't be over ambitious. Enjoy your time more.
Agreed.
So number 5, I think this is unbelievably common because people assume what happens in their country happens everywhere else, is underestimating the time required for airport security.
Yeah,
Some
I
countries,
don't like that stress.
Some countries stupidly quick. Some countries stupidly long. Just depends who you are, what country you are, what your visa is. So there's so many different levels to it, because this is airport security, but some countries airport security, they're then checking your passport and your boarding pass again, so then it takes even longer.
The US, for example, takes a lot longer.
Yeah, and that's also border control.
Yeah.
So if we include border control, yeah, the US, if you're flying into
JFK?
yeah,
JFK.
yeah, you got JFK
Yeah.
in New York, and then you got LAX in LA.
Makes sense.
Both airports. The JFK airport, I've spent 2.5 hours queuing, and that's being quick.
Yeah.
Let alone everyone who then takes longer there.
Mm.
They always question my mum's passport just on her Irish name, thinking that it's not Irish. They've genuinely questioned her, saying it's not an Irish name. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think this is even more important now with COVID and the extra requirements that come through with COVID, is that you need to either do your research or just make sure that you give yourself enough time when you go to the airport.
Yeah. I'd say always give yourself, if it's domestic travel,
At
you
least
can always be
5
quicker.
minutes.
If it's domestic travel, you can normally turn up the airport hour before. If it's international travel, I'd always give yourself like 2 hours. That's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
And if you know that there's been a recent natural disaster, it's a school holiday, there's been a terrorist incident,
Or the red list has changed.
yeah, then they're all going to jump up. And COVID, with COVID passports and all the rules and tests and stuff, just jump everything up.
Mm.
So, number 6, and this is one where we've been fairly close before, and it has actually affected us. We've missed flights because of this, is booking flights too close together.
Yeah, that wasn't our fault.
No, it wasn't.
But booking flights too close together can sometimes mean,
Missing the second one.
yeah, which so you have a lot less margin for error, and we struggled. We didn't really have a choice.
For people who don't know what we mean by booking flights too close together, is when you're travelling, let's say from the UK to Australia, there's only one airline now which has only just started doing that in one go, but you normally have to do a second flight, so it's 2 parts flights. It's not just one flight from the UK to Australia. There's a flight where you go into transit, or a connecting flight. So let's say you go from the UK to Bangkok to then Sydney, or you go the UK to Dubai to Sydney, or you go the UK to Hong Kong to Sydney. Is you'd be getting 2 flights, and we're talking here about making
you could go
that
Shenzhen
connection
to
time.
Sydney as well.
Yeah, so we're talking about making that connection time between your flights long enough that if there's a small delay on flight number 1, or you're parked on the tarmac at the airport, let's say in Hong Kong, for too long, that you don't miss your connecting flight. That's what we're meaning by here about booking your flights too close together.
But don't worry about it. If you're booking a flight that is from London to Sydney in the end, then you should be okay. And if you miss it, then they will just put you on another flight. Where you have to worry is if you book a flight and on Skyscanner it tells you this and it's self-transfer. That's when it becomes a bit more difficult. But we did have an issue with this when we went to Rio, and that there was a delay. We missed the flight. We got stuck in a random place in Brazil.
He's not in a good mood.
Will was not his smiley, loud. Well, I mean, he's still loud. That's unavoidable.
I was really grumpy.
He was fun to deal with, but what it actually meant was we did get on a flight and we did get to Rio eventually, but we missed some activities that we had originally planned to do.
Yeah, we'd cram Rio really tight space.
Really tight space. But I think what was semi-fortunate, well, not fortunate, but it was raining / the weather wasn't that great, which actually meant that it made it easier for us to make our decisions of what things we weren't going to do.
Yeah.
So we weren't going to try and hike up Sugarloaf Mountain. We weren't going to spend time on the beach because it was raining. So it made it easier, and we still did a lot that day, but it affected our travel quite a bit.
I agree. So, number 7, and this is one I know you've preached a little bit before, and a common mistake, not having the correct visa.
Not having the correct who? Yeah, no, not having the correct visa. Not ideal.
No.
No.
You don't want to spend all the money travelling to a country to find out that you're not allowed in the country.
Yes, and not strictly speaking visa, but making sure that you have all your vaccinations up to date and know the rules with COVID is...
Well, a little bit like Novak Djokovic.
Wouldn't know what you're talking about there. But yes, reading the rules and understanding how to get into a country is even more important now. Like with South America, with lots of places there, you may need your yellow fever certificate. For everywhere now, you need some sort of COVID something or other. That is, unless you're going to Albania or North Macedonia, because they've decided it doesn't exist.
Yeah. And also, if you've been granted your visa, or you're already on the flight to the country, you're not guaranteed entry to said country. There's so many cases of having the visa granted in your home
it gets
country,
revoked.
and then you get there, and then something's wrong with it.
Or like they've, what was it? Was it a wrong passport number in Australia with your passport?
What was it?
Because your visa was
my
wrong.
Birth year.
Birth year was wrong. Yes, your visa was somehow.
Yeah.
Oh no, was that just the plane ticket?
No, it was the visa.
Visa.
The visa entry for Australia, the birth year was wrong, but then it kept becoming a problem because first problem arose in Bangkok.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we landed in Sydney, they said, "Oh, they must have done it wrong. I'll sort it out." Then when we came back, when we went to New Zealand, and then when we came back, I had a problem again. And they said, "Oh,
I was getting ready to leave you and enjoy my trip."
But they said, "Oh, this might get taken further," and I just said, "Oh, I had it sorted in Bangkok, and then your colleague in Sydney was meant to have sorted this as well. Otherwise, I physically could not have got this far." And they looked at me and was like, "Yeah, I'm sorry about that." And then they just sorted it there and then. They were ready to just like stop me in my tracks.
I was ready to leave.
So yeah, visas is check your government website of said country, but check the country you're going to's website about your country. So, for example, the UK have really different visa requirements for travelling around the world than the US does.
Yes.
Very, very different. So when we go to Australia or New Zealand, we get quite a good length of visa compared to other countries ever would.
That's because I can live there.
You can because you're a New Zealand national.
But anyway.
But yeah, so check your government website.
And their government website.
Because you don't want a little slip of paper stuck in your passport or a stamp to ruin your holiday.
No, it wouldn't be a good
And
start.
sometimes you're going to have to actually go to get some visas. For a lot of the African visas, you actually have to go to the embassy in London.
Living in London will be so much more convenient for that.
So, forgetting to inform your bank about your holiday trip.
This is
a really common mistake.
a very common mistake, but with some bank cards less important, for example, Monzo,
Yeah. Very different.
it's very different. But if you're HSB, Santander, I wonder if we have a good story about a van or a caravan.
No, that was them. That was them blocking my card, not due to.
It was not due to travel, but it was still travel abroad, credit card, whatnot. But yes, it's very, very important.
If you don't inform your bank you're travelling, and then they suddenly see, oh look, let's say Morgan is in Australia and he's booked a camper van for a month and it's cost him £1,300, let's say, that's likely to get flagged and your card's instantly going to be blocked.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't due to me lacking of informing, it was a mistake on my bank's side. Is we were hiring out this camper van in Australia, and because of our age, we had to put down a really big deposit on the camper van, which was actually more than the value of the camper van itself by a very long way.
Mm-hmm.
And my bank card didn't work.
Yeah.
And then fortunately, my brother was awake at 3:30 in the morning to send money to my other card, because I was then not able to transfer any money from my main bank to my Monzo backup card.
Yeah, and what makes this difficult quite a lot of the time is in a lot of these places, you don't necessarily have access to Wi-Fi, you don't have access to your phone to actually contact your bank. So there's not that much you can do if they've decided that it's not going to work. And if it's not going to work, then you don't have any access to money.
And when you're travelling, quite often there'll be singular, bigger one-off payments and lots of tiny ones.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're booking a tour for 6 days, which has food and hotel and transport included, that will just be one block payment, and then that's more likely to be flagged by your bank.
So one way to get around this and to make it a bit easier is, well, Monzo's a very good card to have, but you can also in the UK get the post office cards, which is a prepaid debit card which you can put cash on and then use that abroad. And that is a very good way to not get your bank card messed up. And I would use that more often than sometimes I don't even take my main bank cards.
Yeah.
Quite often for safety reasons, and I'll take a Monzo maybe and a prepaid travel card.
I think that's good advice. So this is one which you hate. This is your devil. This is the one where I know you cringe when you see people doing this. Exchanging money, thus losing money.
I don't mind losing money.
Whilst changing currency, right? Exchanging currency. And the biggest trap for this is never, and I repeat, never change money in the airport. Never do it.
What if they have a gun to your head?
Don't do it.
What if they have 2 guns to your head?
Contemplate it.
Okay.
3 guns,
Do it.
laugh because they're not able to hold all 3. Grab the other one and shoot them back.
I think they could, like, there. Like 2-handed, 3 guns, put your fingers...
Anyway, so losing money in transaction. What we mean by this is, let's say you take 100 British pounds sterling.
Oh, fantastic. What notes?
In 20s.
Oh, beautiful. Love
To
the
the airport.
polymer note.
And you say, I would like euros, please. You will lose. You get a fee on the transaction as well as an
Just
awful
don't.
exchange rate. So you will come out with significantly less than you should ever get.
And they may trick you and say, oh, there's no fees or there's no commission, and then just give you an
It's just
awful
included in the
exchange
worst
rate.
exchange
Yeah.
rate, yeah. You normally get better exchange rate in your destination.
And you often
a
get
high street
you
exchange
often
rate.
get a better exchange rate just throwing your money in the toilet.
Yeah, probably do. Than going to any of the exchange places.
And the
in
polymer notes would survive.
So, top tips to avoid losing money exchange rate. Number 1 is don't exchange in the airport. Either exchange in your bank or an exchange place in your home country. 2, exchange it in your location, and you might want to pre-plan where you're going to exchange that. Sometimes even the ATMs I've gone to in the destination airport is significantly better exchange rate. So, for example, when I was meeting you in Peru, I hadn't got any currency out because I didn't realise. Actually, no, the taxi drivers over there needed cash and not card.
Which is also often where you're forced to do it.
But my exchange rate was great because I actually use my Monzo, and whenever I use my Monzo, I make sure that I'm taking the exchange rate loss through the Monzo card and not through the machine or the bank itself.
Yes.
Because Monzo's exchange rate is almost 1-for-1 with what it is set by MasterCard, and there's no fee up to £250 worth of withdrawal. So they're great ways of you can do it. Is doing it in your destination, doing it in your home country, or just if you're paying by card, using one of these newer cards which don't take massive chunk or exchange rate fees,
So,
like Monzo, Revolut, Starling.
Yeah. It's all the online banks
All
are
those ones.
very good for travel.
Exactly. So the newer online banks, and that's one of the ways they've been more competitive, is becoming out not just as your bank, but also actually working quite well as a travel card.
Yeah, so I use my Monzo specifically for travel.
So you don't want to spend... We know a lot of people we've spoken to who have saved up money for a long time to go on their gap year or to travel after university or to take a sabbatical. You save up money. You then don't want to save up, let's say, £1,000 to travel or £2,000 to travel, to then instantaneously lose 10% of your hard-earned savings to a stupid exchange rate. You don't want to do that because that could be a skydive, which you've lost, a big experience, more hotel, a longer holiday. You don't want to just waste that time.
And if you want to learn about how you can find yourself more, episode 12, I believe, no.
Oh, Morgan doesn't know his episode.
Episode 9. It's episode 9 because episode 12 is Budapest. Episode 9 on Indonesia. Right at the end of the episode, Will teaches you how to go find yourself when you're on your gap year. Exactly.
So, last but not least, is number 10 on our common mistakes to be made travelling of part 1. And next episode is part 2. So, number 10.
Makes sense.
Another very common mistake. And if you're not used to travelling very much, then this is where we're going to teach you something.
Good.
So, as you travel around the world, you go through...
Why go that way?
I'm thinking that way, just because in my head I know when I'll go from England to France to then keep going around.
Yeah, makes sense. Anti-clockwise is always better.
It depends which side of Earth you look at, whether it's clockwise. If you're looking for the South Pole, it's clockwise. If you're looking for the North... Anyway, so confusing. As you go around the Earth, and you're going in east...
Anti-clockwise.
If you're going east, then you're going through... Well,
To the
you go,
east,
if
to
you
the
go
east.
east or west, you go through time zones,
To
right?
the west, to the west.
But if we're going from England to France...
Yeah, but France have... You can be in a French country in every single time zone, pretty much. They have islands all around the world.
Oh, French... I just completely misheard. Anyway, so there are different time zones. For example, if you're going England to France, you're likely to gain 1 hour. If
Depends where in France.
If you're going from like England, we're talking about literal just France itself, not one of the islands.
Okay.
We are talking France, not
Okay.
a French-owned country. Anyway, so if you're going to France, you'll have 1 hour. Let's say if you're going to Dubai, you'll have 4. If you're going to Australia, I think it's 10 or 12.
Have you memorised this?
South Africa's only, I think, 1.
Or 0. It's
Or is
one
it
of them.
0? It might be 0.
Because South Africa's actually quite good for going for a weekend away. The
7
flights
hour
work.
flight.
Flights work. No, genuinely work perfectly.
Yeah. So you need to realise that whichever way you travel, you're likely to come across a time zone. If you travel for, let's say, at least an hour and a half flight, you're likely to cross a time zone. So just take that into account. So when you're booking your flights, you'll normally take that naturally into account if you're booking it all in one go. But if you're booking them individually, then you can very easily mess up. Very easily mess up. So just be cautious. And also, when you're landing, then you need to think, actually, no, it says I'm landing at that time, but check, make sure it's the correct time in the country and it's not let's say, your British time for that country. These people mess that up a lot.
Yeah. We've said so much random stuff, I've forgotten what this point is.
Time zones. People not taking into account time zones.
Ah, okay,
Whilst
yeah.
travelling. Is it or mess up your transport time?
Jet
mess
lag
up
as well.
activities? Jet lag, huge one.
Jet lag's a big one. So when we went to Australia, we tried to, we did stay awake. I stayed awake until we got to the last flight.
And then you slept. Yeah,
then
5
I slept.
hours before, or
Yeah.
4 hours before it took off. I waited until that flight, so I did. I did 33 hours awake.
Which I now know that I can comfortably do a lot more than. But just at the time, that was a lot for me.
Because sometimes if you land in a country and your time zone's messed up, then you're going to be really tired because suddenly you're waking up, you're falling asleep in the middle of the day, and then you're waking up at midnight. You don't want that to happen. So Morgan and I force ourselves because of our time of our flights.
It's the fun game of going to Australia where you want to beat jet lag.
Yeah, so we stayed awake
dun.
for the entire flight to Bangkok, for the entire 14 hours in Bangkok.
The
And I only fell
entire
asleep-
massage
I
in
fell asleep
Bangkok.
A split second because I think it was a 7-hour, 45-minute flight from Bangkok to Sydney, and I knew that when we landed in Sydney, it was 8 in the morning,
And we were going to go for a
Oz
run.
time, and I only slept for that section. So then, when I woke up, it was morning in Sydney, and I did pretty well for jet lag then.
We went for.
did
You
pretty
went
well.
for part of a run. We both went for a run.
That was just stupid. I was felt so tired. My body was just broken, and I had that really dodgy prawn noodle pad thai.
Great
in Bangkok.
idea.
Such
Great
a
idea.
stupid idea. Such a stupid idea. I think it cost 24p, didn't it?
It's expensive for Bangkok.
Right, so it's been a lot of fun on this episode, and we can't wait for part 2, which is going to be filmed very shortly as well, of 10 common mistakes being
Is
made
it?
whilst travelling.
Is it going to be filmed shortly?
It's going to be filmed very shortly.
Depends how much we procrastinate.
Which is 10 common mistakes to be made whilst travelling, which hope is going to help our new travellers, which we're hoping to connect to as much as possible, as well as our experienced ones who've gone, actually, no, I've got a really funny story for that. So if you do have a really funny story for any of our common mistakes, we'd love for you to get in contact with us through our Instagram or any of the channels which are on at the moment. But our Instagram is
The BKS Travel.
spelt
THEBKSTRAVEL.
well done. So the BKS Travel on Instagram is one of the best ways to message us.
And quickly, before we end, what is our new channel?
So we've actually set up from season 1 a clips channel where we are sticking lots of snippets. So if you don't want to sit down for a full episode, or you're just lying in bed and about to go to sleep and you think, oh, I really want to learn little snippets of information, go to the BKS Clips on YouTube.
Go to BKS
it's BKS Clips. It's not the BKS Clips.
Yeah.
It is just BKS space Clips on YouTube, where we've got, I think just from the first 14 episodes, we've got 400 clips.
Yes, we do. And I'm not even sure if there's a space in between BKS and Clips. It could just be BKS
There is a space.
Clips, is there?
Yeah.
Well,
there is a space.
Good to know.
So we have lots and lots of snippets on there, and it would make a huge help if you subscribe to that channel and liked and viewed our videos. And I'm going to say it now, for the first 1,000 subscribers on our Clips channel, we will plant a tree for every 25 subscribers in a country around the world.
That is exciting.
For every 25 subscribers on our Clips channel, we will be planting a tree somewhere around the world. So
do you think you could plant a tree in Antarctica?
So we'll do 40 trees for the first 1,000. Actually, no, when we hit 1,000, we will have planted 50. I'm going to up it again.
Up it again. Nice.
50 trees for the first 1,000 subscribers.
Now that sounds like a
So a
fantastic
tree for every
deal.
20 subscribers. Let's go with that.
Sounds like a great deal.
I think, yeah.
You're saving the world by subscribing and sending it to your friends. And I think...
Send it to your family, friends, and enemies and tell them all to subscribe.
Great idea. And I think it's about time that we need to roll the outro.
Yeah, let's make it happen. I hope that you can handle going on adventures, best kept secret travels. Yeah, all over the globe, having fun, you know the deal. Amazing secret locations, hang out with Morgan and Will. Educate and entertain, haggle in the market, sharing their experiences. Time to get it started. Let's go.